Hello, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and I proudly represent the 13th Congressional District of California. And I'm here today to discuss ways that restaurant owners in my district in the East Bay can access critical relief included in the American Rescue Plan. I'm joined here today by my good friend and colleague, Congressman Earl Blumenauer from Portland, Oregon, who serves on the Ways and Means Committee, who also co-chairs the Cannabis Caucus with myself, and he has exhibited so much leadership on so many issues, especially in securing the funding that we're talking about today for our restaurants. I'm also joined by restaurateur, chef, and food activist, my good friend Alice Waters, who has taken food to a whole new level in terms of our understanding of the socialization process and all of the real issues around why food should be seen as an issue around climate and as also as medicine. And she's a graduate of UC Berkeley, and like myself, she's a Go Bears alumni, and I'm glad to see you, Alice, and also owner of Chez Panisse, which really has pioneered California cuisine and has also pioneered us really purchasing for locally organic grown gardens and farmers, and has trying to make sure that our schools are teaching our young people proper nutrition and how to cook and how to eat well. And so thank you so much, Alice, for your friendship and your leadership. And also, finally, we're joined by a friend who I love dearly, Rashad Armstead, who's a celebrity chef. He's the founder and CEO of the Crave Restaurant Group. And also he's founder of the Black Food Collective, who's really trying to make sure that Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs and restaurateurs and caterers really are helping each other, and how this he's here to talk about that, and also how the restaurants in the Black community can benefit from the relief package. Today, again, we're going to talk about the different ways that you can access relief for your restaurant. There's no disputing the fact that restaurant industry is still struggling. This pandemic has put a strain on independent restaurants, which, of course, are the beating hearts of our communities. The restaurant industry has accounted for nearly a quarter of job losses during the pandemic, including, now let me give you this, consecutive months of job losses from November 2020 to January 2021. The number of active business owners in the United States plummeted by 3.3 million. And that's 22% over the crucial 2-month window from February to April 2020. Over one half of all restaurant jobs are held by women. In fact, the industry employs over 1 million single mothers. And so thanks to Earl, he made sure that we understood how critical it was to prioritize restaurants in our relief efforts if we wanted to have our favorite gathering places, which restaurants also are, still be there on the other side of this pandemic. The American Rescue Plan, it includes nearly 28.6 billion in grants for food service and drinking establishments. This includes establishments not part of an affiliated group with more than 20 locations or is publicly traded. And so I am just really delighted to be with you today. I hope that we are able to put forth the information about what is in the plan. And I'm so glad that we have the support of the Restaurant Association in securing this funding. And Congressman Blumenauer now is going to talk about groups like the IRC in securing this funding, their advocacy, and them making sure that we knew exactly what we needed to do to put into this bill to help our restaurants. And I say not only survive, Congressman Blumenauer, but also to thrive and be ready on the other side of this pandemic to be even better and bolder in our communities as the great industry that we know that they are. So Congressman Blumenauer, thank you again so much. And tell us a little bit about how all this came to be. I know how you got me involved in it. We were talking about the MORE Act, the cannabis reform, and what we had to do to make sure that the racial justice issues around the mass incarceration rates of those who have been unfortunately caught up in the drug war have these drug charges on their records. Now, we were talking about that, and Congressman Blumenauer transitioned right over to what we had to do for our restaurants. And so it was a perfect segue, and he educated me, and I worked with him to make sure that we got what we got in this bill. So thank you again, Earl, for your leadership, and thank you for today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you, Barbara. I deeply appreciate our partnership on so many issues, dealing with racial justice, dealing with agricultural reform and cannabis. And seeing Alice Water, I remember my very first visit to Chaconay and having her articulate a number of these principles. We like to think that we're on the cutting edge with food in Portland, but Alice sets the pace, moving it forward, and it's really inspirational, the work that you've done. We are excited that we were able to get this across the finish line with support of over half the members of the House and the Senate. There was even some bipartisan support, which you don't see very often, because people recognize that 500,000 independent restaurants and the 11 million people that are employed there are, as Barbara said, they're the beating heart of our vibrant neighborhoods and have taken a terrible toll on with the coronavirus. We started in Portland meeting with advocates, leaders, celebrity chefs, people who are part of that supply chain, and that's something we need to focus on. This is $1 trillion supply chain, and Alice has been part of the effort to deal with that local component of the supply chain and to shorten those links. What we did was to analyze what wasn't working for restaurants. The PPP program was not something that was effective. Many of the restaurants didn't even know if they would be in business in 8 or 10 weeks. And the last thing they needed was more debt. Now, we did some work to make the PPP work a little better for restaurants, but we set about developing a grant program. And this $28.6 billion is keyed to what the difference between the revenues in 2019 and revenues in 2020. And that difference is what they're eligible for a grant. Listening to the needs of women and minorities, we prioritized for the first few weeks that this program is in effect, prioritize applications from minorities, women, veterans. So they're first in line, not what we saw with PPP where they were sort of an afterthought. We prioritized $5 billion for restaurants with $500,000 or less in annual revenues. So the smaller operations will not be left behind. I'm really excited watching what happened with people around the country. There were, in addition to Barbara, we had all our leadership on board. We had the Senate, Democratic leadership, make this a priority and getting the word out. And the administration, I will say, I could not be happier with the way the Biden administration has jumped into this. I had a fabulous conversation with the new head of the Small Business Administration. They're prioritizing this, and they're moving to get the guidance out as soon as possible and recognize the priorities that we put in this in Congress. But they're the priorities, I will say, and Eric Palmer, the executive director of the Independent Restaurants Coalition, helped galvanize the small restaurant sector. I've been having Zoom calls all over the country. People are energized. I think they're going to be moving right out of the gate to make their application. I think that's one of the things we want to make sure is that people get ready as soon as the guidance and applications are out by the Small Business Administration. We want people to jump on it to make sure that their place in line is secure, because the money's going to run out. We know that. The majority leader, Chuck Schumer, has committed. He'll work with us to try and get more to replenish it. But we've got our work cut out for us to make sure that we get the money out the door. We prove that it's effective, and we help toss a lifeline to people who have been so damaged by the coronavirus.
Thank you so much, Representative Blumenauer. Let's now turn this over to our good friend and visionary woman, warrior woman, entrepreneur, Alice Waters, who can talk a bit about the challenges that the restaurant industry has faced over the last year. And also, following Ms. Waters, I'd like for Chef Rashad to talk about this also as it relates to the Black Food Collective, and then we'll turn it back to Erica from the IRC to talk before we get back to our questions. So, Ms. Waters, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for your leadership. We need to have that, because even at Chez Benisse, and this is our 50th year of the restaurant, and I have to say that it has been an incredible struggle for us to keep ourselves whole. And that, I mean, we need to have people employed so that when we open up, they will be there. And if we can't do that, then it's going to be very difficult for us to open. Now, I really believe that the small restaurants are the ones that really have been building community. They're the ones that have been supporting a whole network of farmers and ranchers and producers. So many people depend on us. So the first thing that we did was try to figure out how we could sell farm boxes from the farmers and include some of the producers in that, because we're thinking about the olive oil producers. We're thinking about the bread bakeries. I mean, they count on us for buying that food every day. And all of a sudden, they don't have us. And so it's a huge network of people that I think are involved in the, you know, the stimulus package that you're offering. It's not just the restaurant. It's so many other people that are benefiting from this. And we really are that backbone of a set of values that I think relate directly to our democracy. We are communicating at the table. That's what we do. We sit and we talk and we eat real food, and it's the place where we come to. So thank you so much for understanding this great difficulty.
Thank you, Alice. You know, as a leader in, I say, food security issues all around the world, you have really placed in context what we now talk about in terms of intersectionality, and how we have to support the restaurant industry because it has a ripple effect on our farming community, on our children, on our lives. And I really thank you for being a health educator also, and a nutrition educator, because that's what you're doing. And what we have done, thanks to Congressman Blumenauer and Erica, you know, has really hopefully been able to secure, at least during this period, our presence, our restaurant's presence, in terms of the viability as a community institution, but also educate the public about why restaurants are so important from a broad perspective. So thank you again so much.
I just want to say one other thing, because
Sure.
It's so fascinating to me that the Edible Schoolyard Project here in Berkeley has a half acre of land. And during this time, they have been very, very productive.
Wow.
And have been able to give the food to all the families that are food insecure
Yeah.
at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School. And what a little space can do. It's amazing.
It's phenomenal.
It's sort of the victory gardens that we need from World War II all over again. That food security is. I dug up my front yard.
Yes, I visited edible gardens, and it's just really amazing what food can do to enhance the lives of people on so many fronts.
And the camaraderie among chefs
Yeah,
around the
yeah.
country has been so useful. And everyone's willing to share the best way that we can pivot. Everybody's open to the conversations. And so
Yeah.
I'm just hoping we can get together. Chef Rashid, I hope we can have lunch in my backyard.
Yes, and that's a great lead into Chef Rashad, because I have witnessed the camaraderie among chefs in the African American community, thanks to our Chef Rashad's tremendous leadership. So why don't you kind of speak now and tell us what you see and how you think this is going to impact Black restaurateurs and the Black community and communities of color, and the camaraderie really between the restaurant owners and caterers in our community.
Okay. Well, first again, thank you, Congressman
Are
Barbara
you
Lee,
on
for
mute?
having.
Now, okay, we hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Congresswoman, for having me on today. I really, really appreciate it. Can you guys hear me good?
Now we
Okay.
can.
Okay. And also,
Yeah.
Miss Alice Waters, I will take you up on that invitation. You just let me know. I appreciate it. So we, 2017, I founded the Black Food Collective, and I did it just to bring Black-owned food business together. That was our goal, was to do events for different tech companies and things like that. And when COVID hit, I knew that the Black food businesses would be affected the most, simply because we were already struggling and chasing our tail already in the industry. We have problems finding access to capital. We have problems with securing lines of credit and spaces to be in our communities. So this is when I wanted to really change our vision for what the Black Food Collective stood for, was to make it more of an impact investment type of company, where we wanted to really be strategic on how we invested in these businesses. And so I went and found a kitchen in East Oakland, founded like literally within a week. I rented it and started preparing meals out of it, and then opened it up for Black food businesses to start hosting pop-ups out of, to keep their businesses going. Because a lot of the businesses, they were living off of their catering companies, living off their pop-up restaurants. And when COVID hit, everything just stopped for them. And so when we opened up our space we have about 10 businesses right now operating out of our space, hosting pop-ups, doing their meal preps, doing everything right now. And they're actually still flowing in their business. And we feed about 1,300 people every week through different meal programs that serve underserved people in the community. And we also have made, I think, right at about 100,000 for these businesses since COVID has happened, just by some of these meal programs. And so it just shows you how impactful a person can be once they kind of turn their eyes off of themselves and what's going on, but you look at the people around you and you really come together and say, let's work together to do something that is going to keep us all afloat. And then once we get afloat, then we can figure out how to build from there. And this is what the Black Food Collective is on the process of doing. And since COVID happened, I was trying to figure out different ways, because like I said before, I knew that Black food businesses would suffer the most. We've had restaurants close out here. We've had bars close. We've had food trucks, caterers, people that are not going to even return to the industry because they can't. They had to go out there and get jobs. They had to go out there and figure out a new way of living because they didn't have what they needed to survive through this. And so we figured out a way to where we can come up with something that, after all this is happening, we have to be more intentional about our investment in businesses. All these different programs, they're great, but we have to figure out not just surviving, but how, like Congresswoman said, how to thrive after this and how to be a better industry after this is over with. So everyone is aware of the new ghost kitchen model that is being put out there, where it's a great model. Some call it a virtual restaurant model, and they're great, but again, they're not obtainable to Black people and people of color or people in impoverished communities. And so I came up with this great idea just out of being at home during COVID, locked up in a room. And I said, okay, I got to figure out something. And we came up with this idea, and we're calling it the Epic Ventures Test Kitchen. Epic stands for impacting communities. No, sorry, edifying people and impacting communities. And this model is a ghost kitchen model that we created where we're going to have 30 uh, 320 square foot restaurant spaces made out of shipping containers. We're also going to have 5 storefront restaurants. We're also going to have a community garden there that will be ran by a person of color that actually already has a garden here in Oakland and in Livermore, but we want to bring it to West Oakland where they have access to more fresh vegetables strategically for the restaurants and the food businesses. We're also going to have a 300 square foot cannabis kitchen that will be certified for people to create cannabis products, because that's an industry that Black people and people of color have literally, we built the industry, but we're not profiting off of it. And so it's time for that narrative to change. We're also going to have a manufacturing kitchen, a catering kitchen, and a mini grocery store kitchen that will give the community access to food that's made by local people. We have people like the Real California Dairy that are going to come on and help us actually create Black owned and minority owned cheese and dairy products, where they're going to help us actually guide us through the steps to become those. But I do want to share the renderings that we have just came up with. You guys are the second group of people to see this. I'm going to try to see if we can share the screen. We can't find it. Okay, so
Okay.
I'll just send it to Congresswoman Barbara Lee later. So this concept, again, is made out of shipping containers, meaning that it's going to be eco-friendly. We want to do something. Our vision is to have it in West Oakland. We're going to build it on a 20,000 square foot plot of land. It's going to have everything from a business development center to where we can really help businesses grow. I think that's one of the things that, as a Black owned business and as a minority business, is that sometimes we don't know the road to actually grow our businesses where we can actually go home at night after working 8 hours like a normal schedule. We work extra hard just to get pennies out of this industry that we love so much and that we've paid so many dues for. And this is what the Epic Ventures Test Kitchen stands for. It's just not for Black owned businesses, but it's for everyone that is in the community that really, really wants to open up a food business but does not have access to capital. And like I said, in the ghost kitchen models, those are going for about $8,000 a month. And a small business can afford that. Our model, we actually want to build the actual kitchens for them and charge them anywhere between $2,000 to $2,500 a month for those spaces. So that literally when they come in there and they say, we want to start a business, they go through our business development center. We help them out with their menu, their branding, and then they're able to walk into a space and open up their business.
Good.
So we've been fighting, and I'm going to continue to fight. We have so many great local programs out here in Oakland that are fighting food insecurity. And I'm stepping into the space where I'm speaking for small businesses, because I think sometimes as a food business, we get left out of the conversation.
Yeah.
But like we've all collectively said, food and restaurants and farmers and grocery stores, those are the foundation of our community. Our community would be nothing without those things. Yeah. And over the time of COVID, we have fed thousands of people to try our best as the restaurant industry to do our part. And I think that we've done more than so many other industries, because we've been feeding people. And that's the most important part, because we need food to live.
Yeah.
So again, thank you.
Let me just say to you, you and the Black community, we have a saying, making a way out of no way. Well, Chef Rashad has made a way out of no way. And I'm sure, and we're going to have to talk about this $28.6 billion in grants, which we put in the rescue package, that you're perfectly positioned to be able to access, if you so choose, for these restaurateurs and for Epic and for all of the issues that you're dealing with in terms of the thriving of our businesses, to really benefit from the rescue plan. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now I'd like to ask the Independent Restaurant Coalition representative to speak, which is a coalition of independent restaurants and bars. And I think it's 11 million people that you employ, Erica. And thank you so much for your leadership. This bill never would have passed without your input and your help. So why don't you speak now, and we'll talk about later how restaurants can secure this funding.
Thank you so much. It's a tough act to follow after.
Yeah, now we hear you.
Thank you so much. It's Chef Rashad, you are a tough act to follow, and especially after following you and my idol Alice Waters, I'm at a loss. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you, Congresswoman Lee, and thank you, Congressman Blumenauer, for your advocacy and your support of restaurants nationwide. We are just so incredibly grateful for your tireless work and leadership on this effort. I'm the executive director of the Independent Restaurant Coalition. We are a coalition that was formed during the COVID-19 pandemic to give voice to the 500,000 local restaurants and bars and the 11 million people that this industry employs across the country. Our nation's local independent restaurants and bars anchor our communities, as you well know. They drive domestic and international tourism. They invigorate development in every corner of the US. And as I said, we directly employ over 11 million people across the country, but indirectly, we support an additional 5 million workers up and down the supply chain. We make up a $760 billion restaurant economy. We support growers, packers, fishermen, vintners, butchers, bakers, and tens of thousands of other small businesses. And individually, we're pretty small, but what we've learned this year more than ever before, that is when we unify our voices, our collective impact can be rather immense. So our priority today is to make sure that we are using our voices to make sure that all of those independent restaurants in your neighborhood and in mine and Mr. Blumenauer's, that they know how to apply for the grant funding that's available that you all have made possible. And I'm here just to help answer any questions you might have about the program.
Thank you very much. And I know there are quite a few questions that we have. And so Congressman Blumenauer, feel free to weigh in and answer the questions also, or make some comments, and also Rashad, yourself. But the first question is, how do programs like the PPP, the EIDL, and ERTC, and you may want to explain what they mean, ERTC, work with the restaurant grant? Erica, would you like to take that on? PPP, EIDL, and ERTC.
Sure, and we'll start with ERTC. The ERTC is your Employee Retention Tax Credit that you may be taking advantage of this year to support keeping your folks on staff. To apply for a restaurant grant program, as Congressman Blumenauer mentioned, you will use the difference in your revenue between 2020 and 2019, and then you subtract the amount if you received a PPP loan. If you did not receive a PPP loan, your grant amount is simply the difference in your revenue between 2020 and 2019. You don't have to subtract your EIDL loan or your employee retention credit. In fact, we encourage you to take advantage of all federal funding options that are available to you.
Great. And so how soon can restaurants apply for a grant?
We anticipate that the Small Business Administration is going to come forward very soon with the guidance and the forms. It's a matter of days, not weeks. So it's important for people to get their materials together, be able to document what their revenues have been, its revenues. And as Erica said, the other programs other than the PPP don't matter. It is important to recognize this is a grant. It's not a loan. So there's no downside. And the opportunities to spend this money are virtually any normal restaurant operation. Supplies, staff, rent, insurance, the whole range of things that you need to have to be able to be in business. These grants are eligible to be spent on.
Now I'm going to ask Rashad, I'm going to add a question here to Rashad in terms of our Black business owners who you mentioned. Do you think this process is one that would be a process that the Black Food Collective would be able to engage in?
I definitely think so. I think for some of our businesses that are within our network, I think that they would definitely benefit off of this and be a part of. I think that once we figure out what the guidelines are, I'll do my best to prepare them for it. I think that as the Black Food Collective as a whole, the way that we've been doing it with like allocating out meals through some of the different programs is basically the programs will call me and say, hey, we got 1,000 meals that we want you to do for the week, and then I would turn around and allocate them out to all the businesses. And I kind of see that playing a role because some of the businesses may not be fully prepared to receive the grants. So I see almost as the Black Food Collective as playing as a umbrella to allocate out the funds to these businesses
Sure.
that are underneath us.
Okay, and as we're talking, I'm thinking now some of our ethnic chambers of commerce could maybe provide some of the technical assistance, like the
Yes.
Hispanic Chamber, the African American Chamber, because I
Yes.
know the owners are busy doing the work to feed people.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the ability to the infrastructure just may or may not be there to develop the packages. So we'll talk offline about this. But I think that what Congressman Blumenauer laid out really provides an opportunity to really get in the mix.
Barbara,
Earl?
I'm going to have to jump off, but we look forward to being able to follow up with information. Erica and the coalition can help in terms of having more conversations like this. And I really appreciate your leadership to help us getting to this point. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you again. And so, Erica, you and Rashad, can you stay on another 5 minutes? Okay, great. Thanks, Earl. Let me ask you, in terms of opening a restaurant, Erica, if a restaurant was opened in 2020, would that restaurant be eligible for a grant?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll answer this question, and I'm going to go back to a previous question as well. Okay. If you open your restaurant in 2020, you are eligible for a grant. And because you may not have had revenues in 2020, you're going to be, or you don't have revenues in 2019 to compare them to determine your grant amount for a restaurant that opened in 2020, you will look at the eligible expenses that you incurred during the year. And if you were able to open and you had some revenue, the formula for your grant will be your 2020 expenses minus any 2020 revenue you received. And that's it. Very simple, and you're most certainly eligible. I wanted to just add, you had asked if you thought the program was accessible. And we have a tremendous amount of information on our website, which is saverestaurants.com, and it's available in 5 languages. We have a resource page that provides us information in Spanish, Arabic, Korean, Chinese, and Vietnamese. We're doing our best to break down some of the barriers in being able to access to that information. So I would encourage anyone that's watching today that needs a little bit more information and would benefit from having it in additional languages to visit the website.
Great. Now, let me ask you, following up that, with respect to the prioritization of women and veterans-owned restaurants, socially and economically disadvantaged businesses during the first 21 days of the program, which is extremely important. So our businesses are first in line. Is there a qualification for ownership percentage to constitute any of these groups? And also, what sort of documentation is needed?
There is a self-certification process, no documentation needed. So there's a prioritization, as you mentioned, for groups that are traditionally have been, unfortunately, socially or economically disadvantaged. So that means that anyone who is a restaurant owner who is Black, Hispanic, Native American, a Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander are eligible, and simply by self-certifying on this application, they will be eligible for prioritization.
Great. Okay, Rashad. So that's very important for our minority and African American individuals, restaurateurs, and caterers, and food service industry who want to get in the mix on this. The first 21 days priority. So that means we got to get to work really fast.
Yes.
Erica, the funds, will there be enough funds for these grants? And what if there's more money than a restaurant owner can use? What happens then?
Well, I'm afraid there's not going to be enough money for everyone that needs grants, but I don't want that to be a deterrent for anyone to consider applying. So if you are in need, if you had a revenue loss in 2020, please apply, and apply right away the moment the application opens. And as you heard Congressman Blumenauer say, we expect that to be within this month. in the next week or so. So it's very important to get your documentation together. If you have your tax returns done, that's a great way to apply, but definitely apply. And if you are applying for, if you end up with more money than in the grant than you can receive, the money does go back to the federal government. So,
okay. And are the grants taxed?
The grants are not taxed.
Okay. And if the restaurant is hibernating but not permanently closed, which a lot of, I know, our African American restaurants are they still eligible?
They are eligible as long as you are open. From a legal perspective, as long as your business entity has not closed, you are eligible for this grant program.
Okay. And finally, what should they do to prepare to apply? And Rashad, I'm so glad you're on, because this is information that we need to get out to the entire community in my district.
Yes.
And Erica, thank you so much, because, you know, so often we're on the back end of resources that we appropriate, and I'm on the appropriations committee and the budget committee, and I never know that. I've done my job, but we never know what happens then. So,
Yeah.
Rashad, this is so important for you to be on.
Yes, it is.
Okay? So
Yes,
what
it
can
is.
we do to make sure that our restaurants prepare to apply?
Well, we expect in the next few days or in the next week that the SBA will publish on their website a very easy form that will allow you to basically act like it's a worksheet and fill out the information that you need to apply. But in advance of that, what I recommend you doing is, you know, take your 2019 tax returns. I'm assuming everybody's done those at least. And you want to be looking at what your revenue was in 2019. And then in 2020, you also want to have documentation of your revenue. That might come in a report from your point of sale system. It might come from your bank statements. It might also come from your tax return. But get that documentation in order and demonstrate what your revenue was in 2019 and in 2020. And then you're going to want to take a look at what your expenses were for this eligible period. And the eligible period for the grant begins way back to February 15th of 2020. So hopefully everybody's been keeping track of the expenses they've had from 2020 and what they've used PPP or those EIDL loans or employee retention credit on, and any expense that wasn't covered by those and is incurred during the normal operation of a business. So whether that's food and beverage expense, your rent, your payroll, all of those things are eligible expenses. So hopefully you either have a great bookkeeper or have a good friend who can help you look at your books, or you're using some accounting software and you can simply just pull your profit and loss statements and use those numbers for your application.
Great. And Eric, let me just thank you, because the Independent Restaurant Coalition is so important in terms of not only making sure that $28 billion is in the bill, but the implementation. And I'm just wondering, do you have representatives in different communities that our restaurants can go to get this kind of information individually, or how are you set up and organized? Because you all have been the driving force behind this.
Well, thank you so much for that acknowledgement. We've been working really hard, and we are a new organization, so we do not have state chapters at this point. The best way to reach us is going to our website at saverestaurants.com, or you can email questions@restaurantcoalition.com, and you end up coming to me, and I'll get right back to you. We do have members across the country, and we, you know, if I have somebody in community that can help answer those questions, then we'll definitely connect you to them. But oftentimes you're just stuck with me.
You're going to be busy. Thank goodness. I'm glad.
I'm happy to be
Rashad,
busy.
you know where to go. But Rashad, would you like to have some closing comments before we conclude this? And this has been so helpful.
For sure. I did have one question for Erica. I wanted to know, are you guys going based off of the net or the gross income difference?
Gross.
With the off the gross. Okay. That's good to know. It's good to know.
Okay.
Well, I think for me, again, I just thank you guys for this opportunity, and I think that I will say I do have hope that I think that the future is going to be brighter. I think that it's just going to take a lot of work for us to all collectively come together and really do something that is going to change our world for the future. I think that we just have to really just continue to have conversations like this. And we have to continue to have people like the Congresswoman and Congressman Earl to really have to speak on our behalf when they go before Congress and they go before people that can actually make change. And again, I tell every person in the community that we need your support as food business owners, and we need you to continue to support us. We need you to continue to show us love, because you have what's been keeping us going through all this time. And I appreciate everybody, and I just thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Rashad, and thank you for being such a great leader. And Erica, thank you. Erica, you're going to be really busy. Chef Rashad, you're going to be really busy. I know my office is going to be really busy. I want to thank my staff for helping us organize this today, but also thank all of you who have tuned in, because this is a big deal. And we have to, this is one of the silver linings in this horrible cloud that we've been dealing with for now over a year with the virus. So many people's lives and livelihoods have been shattered. And so we're doing everything we can do to make sure that, again, as I said earlier, not only you survive, but you thrive on the other side of this. So hopefully today will help. And for additional information, contact Erica, Chef Rashad, myself, and we'll be happy to help navigate and get you to the next step. So thank you all again so much. Stay healthy, continue to masking, help hand sanitizing, all the health protocols, 6 feet apart, because this is not over. This pandemic is not over, and we have to do everything we can do to get beyond that. And so that requires us all, vaccinated or not, to stay within the health protocol requirements. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.